What's up everyone, Tommy with Studio Sense here. If you have come to this video or this page today looking for thoughts and impressions on Yves Saint Laurent's Y Eau de Parfum Intense, you've come to the right place because that's exactly what we're going to do. Right after this brief intro reel, we're going to pop the cap off and get into it. I've got that and more coming up, so stay tuned. Welcome back everyone. Today we are talking about one of the most influential and popular lines in the Yves Saint Laurent catalog of fragrances for men, and that is Y, and in particular the brand new release, the new flanker, Y EDP Intense. Y has become widely known as one of the most popular and iconic blue fragrances for men. I own the entire line myself and find that I enjoy each iteration for its own kind of particular take on the Y brand, or the Y scent profile, or DNA as it's often called. Really excited to pop the lid off this one, get to spraying, and give you guys my first impressions. Like we always do though, let's first take a quick look at that presentation. The box is two tones of blue and has a light texture to it. On the front is a silver Y, and behind that is YSL, the logo. Below that is Yves Saint Laurent Eau de Parfum Intense, 3.3 fluid ounces, 100 ml. On the right side of the box at the bottom it says yslbeauty.com. On the left side, near the bottom, some obscure Illuminati scratch off. On the back of the box you have precaution information, address information, the ingredients listing, as well as a UPC and various stickers. The bottom of the box is a minimalistic snapshot of pretty much the same. For anyone that wishes to check on checkfresh.com, the batch code is... The bottle style is the same, however, the glass is tinted darker blue, and that's how you can distinguish it from the other bottles. Some of the bottles have a gradient. The Eau de Parfum version of the Y line is just very dark. This isn't quite as dark. You can still see through the bottle on the front, which features the Y that is wrapped around. On the bottom part of the Y it says Yves Saint Laurent. If you go to the right, the top of the Y wraps around to the right side of the bottle. The lid is silver and black with YSL stamped on the top. On the bottom of the bottle is an adhesive sticker with the batch code and various information. I've always been a fan of this presentation. I just really like the way that this looks. I'll just show you another bottle in the line as comparison, and this is the EDP version of Y. This, of course, is the newest. You can see that this has a slight gradient to it. The new EDP Intense has no gradient. It is a solid color, and it is the darkest of the line, with the exception of Eau de Parfum, which is the most dark. Pretty much can't see through that very well. You can still see through this, but it's just the darkest blue. That's pretty much their focus, is amping up that intensity and creating a bit more of a longer lasting experience than any of the previous iterations. So very minimal changes in the presentation. I would call that a good thing. You know, if it's not broke, don't fix it. It's a great looking bottle, and the darker bottle makes it easier to pick out that this is the EDP Intense version. Now that we've taken an albeit quick but pretty decent look at the presentation, what about the fragrance itself? What are the notes that make up Y EDP Intense? Y Eau de Parfum Intense is a powerful and highly sensual interpretation of the Y signature scent. This clean scent amplifies the iconic blend to the extreme. A deep blue, sexy, and fresh scent with all-day-long intensity in a spray. Features top notes of juniper berry, ginger, and bergamot, with heart notes of sage, geranium, and lavender, resting on a base of cedar wood, vetiver, and patchouli. Alright, so if you haven't already noticed, blue seems to be a particular ongoing recurring theme in this version of the Y DNA. So we've got blue juniper berries. The bottle itself is blue or bluer, right, than previous iterations. There's no gradient, there's no light to dark. And so our focus is then on juniper berries. Juniper berries as a note, very easy to like. A sharp, bracing, very brisk note. It's kind of like fresh air hitting your face, although there is a pungency to it and a camphoraceous kind of side to juniper as well that offers kind of an aromatic incendiary reaction similar to ginger. So if you got a good bit of juniper and ginger in this in the open, this is going to ramp up that intensity. So without waiting any longer, let's go ahead and check out the aroma itself. And I always like these atomizer pumps. Great, super easy to use, and it throws out a really good douse and amount of juice. Man, in the air, this smells really, really good. Guys, let me just tell you, the intensity of this fragrance is very, very much there. It's not something you have to disseminate or pick apart. The intensity is just a punch. If you are new to the fragrance community, this might be news to you, but in the fragrance community, it's generally agreed, kind of an unwritten agreement, that the best of the Y line is YEDP, followed closely by the Eau de Parfum version, but YEDP seems to be generally accepted as the most long-lasting and best carries the scent profile of the Y line. So I used it as kind of a litmus for comparison of the new YEDP Intense. A couple douses on one arm, sprayed a couple of the new on the other, and slept on it. And basically the conclusion that I've come to in kind of smelling each one of them throughout the day as I was wearing them is that the new EDP is definitely more vociferous in the open and in the mid. It's a definitely much broader spectrum when it comes to your scent bubble, right? So you give yourself almost an extra foot. I wouldn't call it a loud fragrance, but in comparison with the EDP, it definitely projects a bit more. Not really a marked difference, but it's enough to notice. There's a good bit of sweetness in the open of YEDP. In the intense, that's not necessarily the focus. Sweetness does actually come out more as time goes on, and it ends up being as sweet as the EDP, but the intensity is the first thing that it overcomes the sweetness. It's so much more voluminous and more aromatic in the open and in the mid than the EDP is. So I like that, and I like it's almost like a time release kind of sweetness. I like that aspect of this. One thing too that is notable from the EDP to the EDP Intense, it's not as intensely impacting of a fruity opening as is the EDP. I don't think it's a good or bad thing. It's just a difference between the two. You still have your very fruity opening in this. It's just the intensity of the overall aroma is the thing that kind of smacks you in the face. I kind of like that about the Intense, rather. And I like that about the EDP. I like the difference in this. It's the biggest thing you notice about the EDP Intense straight out the gate is that intensity. It's pretty much that juniper and ginger combination is a 1-2 punch with a little bit of fruit in the bergamot there. The spices and that sweetness come into play as time goes on. As far as breaking down how much I get the patchouli, how much I get, I'm not gonna go into a ton of detail. I want to talk to you about the overall impact of the aroma. I really like it. I think it's a strong addition to the Y line. I think some people are going to think that it is a redundant addition to the line, but I think the biggest difference in the EDP Intense is the intensity and the longevity. Because the next morning when I got up, I tried smelling the EDP and I couldn't smell it, but I could still catch the EDP Intense on my arm, proving that it does last longer. It was still very much there, and I could smell it and enjoy it. So it definitely is boss in terms of longevity. But in terms of overall aroma and representation of the Y line, I'm really digging the intensity of this, and overall it carries that aroma perfectly. It's not a more mature version of the Y DNA, and it's not a youthful, more playful version. It's just definitely a ramped up, more intense experience of the Y DNA with just a bit less of the fruit and a bit more of the spice. And I think that's a necessity when you're going for more longevity, when you're going for more punch and more power behind the aroma. You got to have something to create that, and they're using the spices, you know, the lavender, the sage in combination with the ginger and juniper. If you like anything about that description, you'll probably really enjoy this particular iteration. But do you have to buy YEDP Intense? No, unless longevity is your thing and you're really dogged about how a fragrance performs and you're all about that, that'd be the biggest reason to purchase it over the EDP. But if you already own the EDP, I'm not necessarily saying that you have to have this. I always say this in each video, unless you're a completionist, yada yada, all those reasons that you would think are obvious. Because it does perform so well, I'm not going to say that this is a redundant purchase. I still think there's a good reason to purchase it if you already have the EDP. But if you are absolutely satisfied with the EDP or Y Live or the original Y or the new reformulation, the 2022 reformulation of the original Y, and you're happy with that, there's not necessarily a reason to get the EDP Intense. This does come in a 60 ml size. This is 123. The 100 ml is 138 at Macy's and at most retail outlets. In terms of season and when to wear it, again, that's completely up to you. It's designed to be an everyday wear, office friendly, always, anywhere, all season kind of fragrance. The biggest two aspects of this fragrance that you'll notice that makes it stand out is written into the name, and that is the intensity. It is a extremely voluminous aromatic fragrance. As soon as you spray it on, it fills the room and it makes it smell amazing. So it's got that going for it. And the second one is right on the heels of the aroma is the performance. It performs gangbusters. And as a result of that, I'll probably end up grabbing this equally with the EDP, maybe even a bit more this summer. I have to wait and see. This is just briefly my impressions of the fragrance. I'll keep you guys up to date and do a full review of this very soon. Well guys, that's a wrap of my first impressions of Yves Saint Laurent's Y Eau de Parfum Intense. If you already own one of the Y line and you're really happy with that, then you probably should just stick to that. Unless those two things are something that you want in your fragrance and you feel like it's lacking in what you're using now, that would be the only reason to chunk down, you know, a full-on $140, which seems to be the going rate for newer kind of top tier designer fragrances right now. Otherwise, wait until it hits discounters and you'll be dropping by $50 or more in terms of price. I really appreciate you guys listening to the recommendation of YouTube, if that's what brought you here, or clicking on this link to check out today's video. As always, thank you so much for your continued support on my channel. I'm Tommy with Studio Sense, and I'll see you tomorrow.